Good morning, everyone. It's got a nice crowd out here, I see, so hopefully we'll have a good meeting. Before we start our meetings today, I want to let everyone know that there's some speaker request forms over there on the podium, behind the podium over there. So if anyone wants to speak to an item, please fill out one of those forms and then give it to one of the staff people so we make sure that we recognize you when it's your turn to speak. And also, if anybody has any cell phones in the audience, please turn them off or turn them to mute. If you have to take a call, please step outside so it doesn't disrupt the meeting. We're going to start the meeting this morning with our Zoning Board of Adjustment. We have one item on the agenda, so I will take any information that we can have on that item if we ask the staff. Thank you. I forgot about the minutes. Okay, we'll take a motion on the minutes.
Move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Now we will take the Zoning Board of Adjustment item.
However, based on staff's review of the site plan, you'll see that they're measuring from the sidewalk, so that's typically a foot in. The property line's a foot in from the sidewalk, so really when we're looking at this, it'll be going from 10 feet to 10 inches, just so everyone's clear. Start with location. It's zone low density residential district. There's a conditional use permit from 1975 for a church on this property. Properties to the north, south, east, and west are zone low density residential and are single family dwellings. Aerial view showing the church and the parking. What you can get from this is a pretty large property. The applicant's proposing to place a sign in front of the building in this location. However, you'll see that there's a lot of real estate on either side of the church to the east and west where a sign could be placed. Future land use is low density neighborhood, and the East Fairmont and Elm Avenue to the north and to the west are arterial streets. However, East Elk Street is a residential street. Site plan, as you can see, this is Elk Street, the church building. We got entrance or curb approaches on either side, and the proposed sign is in this area, showing a measurement of 1 foot 10 inches, 10.5 inches from the sidewalk. And again, typically the sidewalk is about a foot off the property line. Being between those two approaches, Public Works staff has indicated that it's not going to interfere with site triangles. However, I'll take you through some photos I was able to take yesterday. Might contradict that. View of the proposed sign, it's 5 feet wide, 6 inches high. So that's something to consider, putting right between those two driveway approaches. This is looking at the property from Elk Street, looking to the north and east. So the proposed sign is in this area of vegetation between two approaches. This is looking to the south. You see residential properties. This to the south and west. This is looking to the south and west from the interior of the property. Notice the vegetation. Can't see through it to the street back here. And this is looking from the approach. This is actually sitting in a vehicle at that west side approach, looking to the east. Can't really see oncoming traffic. This is looking from the west end of East Elk Street, looking to the east at the church. Sign could be placed between these two poles there and meet setbacks, still be visible from this side of the road. Can't really even see the vegetation. If you put a 6-foot sign there, is it really going to help? This is looking from the opposite direction, looking to the west from the east end of East Elk Street. This building here is the church. Again, this is the vegetation where the sign would be placed. You could probably put something on that side behind the parking lot that would be more visible and would meet setbacks. This is to show you the locations on the west side of the building where there's room to put a sign that would meet setbacks. This is looking on the east side of the building. This is the area behind the parking lot where you could put a sign that would still be visible and would meet all setbacks. So, in conclusion, staff's recommendation is that the variance be denied because there's reasonable use of the land and a sign could be placed elsewhere on the property and meet all setbacks. In addition, if zoning board staff believes that this should be approved, staff recommends that a stipulation of approval be that a surveyed site plan be provided to ensure that the setback is, again, 10 inches, which is what would be 1 foot from the property, or 10 inches from the property line. That's what would it need to be in order to fit that sign into that area. With that, are there any questions for staff?
Okay, not at this time. Thanks, Fletcher. Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to speak to this item? Could you go to the podium, and if you haven't filled out a form, please fill out one so we have it on record. And please state your name.
My name is David Weinmaster, and I'm a deacon with the church. And the reason we want to place the sign there is because if we use the existing property we have to the east, that's 205 feet down at the end of the parking lot. Plus we have rows of trees, and the residential house is right there too. So people coming from the east, you could see the sign once you get around the trees and stuff. And if we use on the other side of the parking lot, the north side of the parking lot, that's 60 to 70 feet away. And that one side of the building would block the parking lot. So you wouldn't be able to see it only coming from the one direction. We go the other way, we go on the west side of the building. That's 100 feet to where he says we have the room, which we do. But then we've got the power lines there. And we got 2 poles, we've got the 2 big boxes out there, and like he's proposed, yeah, you could see it maybe through the poles, and then once you get past the poles, you could probably see it too, but it's not something that would be very visible. The place that we want to put it is we have an existing tree there that's half dead, and we want to take that tree out and put it there, and that's in between both approaches, and the tree does not, as he showed, any of the brush that we have out in front and stuff has not created any traffic problems, and taking that tree down would create a lot less by putting the sign there than having a tree. But to put them on the extreme ends of the property lines does no good, because if we get it on one end coming from the east, you're not going to see it. We get it on the east side coming from the west, you won't see the sign. So it really doesn't make much sense to put them on the ends.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Art Sartorius. I'm the pastor at the church. I won't add much. The one thing I would add, though, is that if you were to go, it was hard to tell from the pictures, but the church sits at the top of a hill. If you go to the west, it's a more steep drop. If you go to the east, it's less steep, but in both situations, you're actually placing a sign there makes it hard to even identify the sign as being for the church. It sounded to me, even one site that was suggested was behind the parking lot, which wouldn't be visible to the public at all, really, if it's because that's actually even behind the building. Also, if you go to the west or to the east, then you start approaching, it's a neighborhood church, and so you start approaching the houses that are existing there and the neighbors there. So our feeling is just that this is the most ideal spot for identifying the church for the public, for not being obstructive to our neighbors, and as was indicated, it doesn't affect the site triangle for the road that comes in near the church either. So we just think it's the most practical place, and we, as far as the stipulation, if it is approved, to have the survey so that it's the proper amount back from the property line, that would be very acceptable to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from the audience? From the commission? Andy?
Thank you, Karen. Two quick questions. One, what's the orientation of the sign? Is it parallel or perpendicular to the street?
I believe it's going to be perpendicular to the street. Let me pull up that site plan and we can...
And then while you do that, Fletcher, question for the applicant. Are you going to maintain the shrubbery around where that sign's going to be, or is that going to come down in order to make room for the sign?
It's harder for him to walk up here. It's all right. If the picture of the front of the church, and the shrubbery that was there, if that could be.
That one. Back there.
Yeah, if you see the tree there on the far right, that is very nearly dead or dying, and that's where the sign would be, and it would be perpendicular to the road.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item? John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that the name of the church that's on the sign on the building?
Yes, it is. The one that's on the above the doors there. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the one that's proposed.
I understand.
Yeah.
But the name of the church is on the building.
It is on the building.
Thank you.
Kim?
I have a question for the applicant. Is there a need for, it looks like you have two parking lots. Is there a need for that back and forth, like drive for traffic?
Probably, I guess the short answer would be no. That's the entire parking area for the church. We tend on a Sunday to fill up on both sides. Sometimes there is traffic going back and forth there. There's also it's not a main entrance, but there's an exit there from the building, a fire exit from the building at that side too. Does that make sense where I'm talking about?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Any other person wish to speak? Steve?
By looking at that, it's tough because as a planning committee member, we have a set of criteria we're supposed to follow, and I'm looking at the criteria, and I don't see where they've got the sign on the building already, so you're coming by, you can see it. If you place it somewhere where it's not obstructing anything, they have the ability to do that. And I'm looking at the criteria, unless somebody else sees something I don't see where I'd be able to even approve this.
Yes, Andy?
I have a potential idea. If just to see if there's any traction on this. What if we ask them to rotate the sign so it's parallel to the street? That would give them about 6 or 7 foot of setback, the best I can tell, and it's not going to be any less obstructive than the shrubbery and the height of the shrubbery that's already there. So I guess I'm throwing out there as an option that maybe the applicant would appreciate or not appreciate, but maybe something we could consider as a commission.
Okay, Steve?
I would actually look at that, Andy, but what would you use for the criteria for granting this?
Reduce the setback to 5 or 6 or 7 feet from the 10 feet.
No, we have a criteria. They have to go away and say we're going to approve it because of, if you look at your criteria down here, there's, on the page, there's 4 or 5 of them. We got to give a reason why we're going to grant a variance to the.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Vicki?
Steve, thank you. And just for clarification, this is the Zoning Board of Adjustment, not the Planning Commission that we're in
Sorry.
session. That's okay. That's okay. Steve, obviously you come with a lot of experience, and you're right. The criteria established by ordinance and by state law is very strict, and you have to show that you can meet them in granting a variance. Where I've seen the Zoning Board of Adjustment in the past grant a setback reduction, as an example, would be if there were topographic constraints, so the sign couldn't be placed someplace else on the property, and it was needed to identify the site. But I think from the pictures that Fletcher showed us, it might not be their first choice of where an alternate location for the sign could be located, but it definitely, there were areas that were level that could support the sign. And I think, Andy, that when Steve's referencing the criteria and you look at those, noting that special circumstance or that hardship or that topographic constraint, looking at your recommendation, you would need to cite those issues.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, we've got an item on the agenda. Does anybody wish to make a motion at this point? We're thinking.
Move to
Madam-
approve recommendation by staff.
Okay, John made a motion to approve the recommendation, which would be to deny, and Linda seconded it. Any further discussion on the motion on hand?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if we could get the motion maker to add to their recommendation that they are recommending to deny as cited by the criteria in the project report. And I think Fletcher did a good job citing which ones were not met.
Is that your motion, John? Okay. And the seconded. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion passes with one no vote. By Andy. Okay, anything else on the Zoning Board of Adjustment? Any discussion items, staff items? No? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Adjourn.
All right. Motion made by Steve and seconded by Linda to adjourn. The Zoning Board of Adjustment is adjourned. We're now going to open the Planning Commission items in the meeting for the Planning Commission of February 25th. So, items 1 through 9 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of the Planning Commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 2, 16 UR 025, item 6, 16 UR 0001, and item 7, 16 UR 002. Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these items are final unless any party appeals to that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Community Planning and Development Services Department by the close of business day on the 7th full calendar day following the action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 9 that staff would like removed? Are there any items 1 through 9 that Planning Commission would like to see removed?
Number 4, please.
Number 4, okay. Any other items? Are there any items 1 through 9 that any audience member would like to see removed?
Move to approve consent calendar with exception of item number 4.
Thank you. Okay, Steve made a motion to approve the consent calendar except for item number 4, and Linda seconded it. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We will now go to item number 4.
Madam Chair, I'll be abstaining from item number 4.
All right. Any other discussion? A motion?
Approve item number 4.
Thank you. Steve made the motion to approve item number 4 with staff recommendation, and Jan seconded it. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we are on the regular items, individual items. Item number 10 is PD 14 PD 00033 for Fox Run subdivision. Is for a review of a major amendment to a planned development to allow a group home for transitional housing on property at 301 Fox Run Drive. And I'll let Fletcher talk about that.
This is a 6-month review. We'll go through the timeline. On December 1st, 2014, a major amendment to the plan development was approved with a 6-month review period. After that 6 months, on May 7th, 2015, it was determined they hadn't been open yet, so we put the stipulation that time to approve with review 6 months after they had gotten their certificate of occupancy. They got their temporary CO in September, so this is about 6 months after that. The review we did was we sent this out to all the review agencies to get input, see if any complaints have been received by the police department, code enforcement. It's all come back that no complaints have been filed. The new executive director of the Cornerstone Mission is here to answer any questions if you have them. Before you on the dais is an email that was received from the Neighborhood Association just stating that they are in opposition of this being in their neighborhood. However, based on getting no complaints in the last 6 months and it's been a running facility that's been full and helping out the community, staff recommends that the major amendment be approved.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any, we don't have any request forms for this item, so I'll go to the commissioners. Any discussion? Okay, for discussion, John made a motion and Andy seconded it. Any discussion from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are at item number 11, which is,
Item number 11 is 15 PD 29. It's a final plan development to allow an oversized garage and reduce setbacks up on Skyline Drive. This was continued from the February 4th meeting. The applicant is requesting that the item be continued to the second meeting in March, which is the March 24th meeting.
Move to continue to March 24th.
okay. Steve has made a motion and Andy seconded it to continue this to March 24th, did you say?
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are at item number 12.
Thank you. Item number 12 is 16 PD 001, a major amendment to the plan development to revise the sign package. The applicant is submitting a revision to the sign package for the Primrose Retirement Communities located on approximately 4.07 acres at 224 East Minnesota Street. Let me take you through some slides. There's a location of the properties. You can see it's in medium density residential district. They do currently have a plan development in place to allow the retirement communities. Aerial view of the property. The proposed sign or the existing sign is actually located right here. No other aspects of the site are changing as a part of this request. Look at the future land use map. Someone is low density neighborhood. And East Minnesota Street is labeled as a minor arterial street on the city's major street plan. Another site plan, this time specifying the location of the sign in relationship to the buildings. The applicant is requesting a reduction in the front yard setback from 10 feet to 1 foot for the existing sign A little history on this. The sign as it exists today was never approved as a part of a sign package for the plan development. The applicant today is proposing to revise the face of the sign, and since it was never included as a part of the sign package, they're requesting this major amendment today to reduce that front yard setback from 10 foot to 1 foot. A look at what the design of the sign is. It's a 5 foot by 10 foot monument sign made of stone and non-illuminated. This is a look at their existing sign today and the proposed sign as it would look after completion. Look at the plan development sign posted on the property in front of the location. Look at East Minnesota Street looking to the east and to the west in front of the sign. Look across the street, and then just a couple shots of the sign itself. I'm glad we had the opportunity to take a look at the different criteria between the Zoning Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission. Keep in mind, please, as a part of the Planning Commission and as a plan development, we're not going to be looking so much at is there a hardship which would not allow that sign to be placed in another location on the property. Instead, we're going to be looking at is this a unique design? Does it function well with the neighborhood, fit in with the context of the neighborhood? A couple things other than that to consider. If they were to move the sign back 10 feet, it would be located in the parking lot. They would also have the option of putting a 10-foot tall pole sign on the property line today. However, we believe that that would not fit with the context of the neighborhood. It would conflict with the primarily residential context of the neighborhood or makeup of the neighborhood. So we believe that this sign located where the existing sign is at today, as well as the materials and the non-illuminated feature of the sign, means that this is an alternative design that's unique to the neighborhood and will fit with the residential character of the area. With that, staff is recommending that this major amendment to the plan development be approved with the stipulations noted in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Linda. Do I have a second? Thanks, Kim. Seconded. Yes, Andy.
I'm all for the sign, but how's this different than the one we just denied?
Madam Chair.
1 foot off the sidewalk. I'm just
It's a
asking the
great
question.
question. It is a great question. So as Rob was saying, when you sat as the Zoning Board of Adjustment, based on state law, there is criteria that has to be met. The church had the option of bringing their sign in as a plan development, where then you do get to go to, is this fitting in with the character of the neighborhood? And if you've ever done a plan development, then you know that you're looking at the parking and the landscaping and all those other components too. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't come in with a plan development to see if their sign could meet that criteria. And it could, if it's secured that it's not in conflict with the utility or any site triangles. And I believe that engineering has said that it's not in a site triangle. So you might see that one again. That was their choice. And Rob tried to point that out because it is confusing. When you do a plan development, you get to be creative in your land area regulations if it fits with the character of the neighborhood and there's a consistent design of all the components of the development. This is an improvement to the sign that's there. If they were to put a pole sign on the property, they could be right up to the lot line. We would rather have the monument sign. And so this is the trade-off. Confusing as it is, when you look at criteria for the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and we've been sued by neighbors and lost if we're not meeting that criteria, even if it makes sense. So I appreciate Steve struggling with that this morning and pointing that out. We will have that discussion with the church members to let them know they have other options as well.
Okay. Steve.
Basically the same question Andy had, because, I looked at it and I thought maybe there's a way we can make it work, and based on the criteria, I knew we couldn't. Then this comes up. And so did I hear you say that the church can go put a pole sign up if they wanted to, or no?
No, Rob was just indicating today that for this application you're acting on right now, an option for them would have been a pole sign, but the monument sign is a far better option for the neighborhood.
Okay. So basically, it's just that we don't have, under the Planning Commission, we can follow a different criteria. So what Andy had suggested prior we could have done if it came to the planning commission versus, all right, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other comments on the motion at hand to approve? Yes, John.
Just one question. As I travel around the country, I'm more and more likely to look at site triangles, and you did try to give us that information on the previous item we discussed. How about this one?
My apologies, I did not remember to mention the site triangles. Public Works did review this, and the proposed sign is not located within any site triangles.
They got it wrong on the Zoning Board of Adjustment, so when you examined it, what did you see?
I'm sorry.
They in the previous Zoning Board of Adjustment, it says no site triangle was up, but you found when you were actually in the driveway that there was obstruction to the site triangle.
No,
No?
I guess I'm a little confused.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
That was Fletcher that did the presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. They're twins. Please note that
Still before noon. My apologies.
Public Works staff has noted that on the church site and on this site, there is no site triangle issues based on where you would park your car as you're entering or exiting the property, and that is the statement on behalf of the city.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve with the stipulations as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We're at item 13.
Thank you. Item number 13 is PD002, a final plan development to allow a convenience store with gas sales, a car wash, and an on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with the restaurant on approximately 6.11 acres of property located southwest of the intersection of Highway 44 and Elderberry Boulevard. This is in the Orchard Meadows subdivision, which is currently undergoing development. Let me take you through some slides. The location of the property, zoned general commercial district. Property across Highway 44 is actually located in Pennington County and is zoned suburban residential district. Aerial view of the property. Ongoing development is occurring in this area. If you've been out there, you know things are really starting to move out there. Future land use shows mixed-use commercial located within an entrance corridor and a gateway to the community. That will be important for you to note here in a moment. And the future land use plan shows East Highway 44 and Elkville Road are identified as principal arterial streets, with Twilight Drive also shown as a minor arterial street. Here's a look at the proposed layout for the facility. As you can see, the gas station and the proposed Inferno restaurant located in the primary structure. And then in the future, as a part of an indeterminate phase 2, they are proposing an automatic car wash located on the west end of the property. A couple things to note here. The first being that the original or existing property line today is located right here. They will be submitting a lot line adjustment sometime in the future to move that property line to the west on the other side of the car wash. They won't be required to bring in that lot line adjustment until such time as they seek a CO or a certificate of occupancy for that car wash, just so you know. A couple other things to note. Location of signage, this would be the location of the Inferno restaurant sign. We've been working with the applicant to clarify the location, dimension, and design of all the signage on the property. The applicant's been good about submitting revised information to us when we had questions. The other sign will be located here. That's going to be a 27-foot tall pole sign, and they are requesting a 42 square foot per side LED message center as a part of that pole sign. Look at elevations for the proposed restaurant and gas station. A couple things to note here. This should be north elevation rather than south. This should be south rather than north. Switch the elevations around. The building is oriented to the north, which would switch all those around. Look at the gas canopy. Floor layout for the inside of the structure. The restaurant's going to be located in this area of the structure. The rest of a convenience store and storage. Look at some of the features of other common sense gas stations that this facility will also include, including the vacuum pumps. This is some revised information regarding the sign. As you can see, 27-foot 1-inch overall height. This is the sign that they've noted will be included. The LED reader board will be located there. Maximum 45-foot tall pole sign would be permitted. However, we should take the time here to point out that the proposed signage, specifically this pole sign and this pole sign that would be advertising the restaurant, do not comply with the requirements of the comprehensive plan. Specifically in gateway corridors or in entrance corridors and gateways, pole signage is to be discouraged and not permitted in those areas. However, we should point out also that the proposed signage as they are showing it does comply with the requirements of the code, the Rapid City Sign Code, which would differ from the comprehensive plan. Look at the site. Right now they're doing some dirt work. Location or photograph of the sign posted on the property. Look at Highway 44 to the west. Across the street, there are single-family residential homes located across Highway 44. However, given the size of Highway 44, it acts as a natural buffer between the residential use and the proposed on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with the restaurant. I would also like to point out that the general commercial district is generally seen as the appropriate district for on-sale liquor establishments, especially when it's in conjunction with another primary use like the restaurant. Look at Highway 44 to the east towards the airport. This is a look at the intersection of Highway 44 and Elderberry Boulevard along the eastern property line of the proposed development. I'll look at Elderberry Boulevard to the south and to the Orchard Meadows. We should point out that there are single-family residences that are being developed approximately 500 feet to the south of this location. Look at Lytle Lane, which is running along the southern border of the property, looking to the west. There will be 2 access points along this road. Another look basically from the south side of the development into the site. And one more look across the site from Highway 44. Given the commercial nature of the corridor, staff believes that the proposed on-sale liquor establishment is appropriate for the area. We believe that the car wash would also be appropriate for the area. But the question of signage is going to be up to the Planning Commission. If you should so choose or so determine that the proposed signage is appropriate for the property and the type of development, then staff recommends that this application be approved with the stipulations outlined in the staff report. Staff is available for questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just for a point of clarification, Rob in his presentation did note that the signage does not comply with the comprehensive plan that's in place right now. This is another one of those. It complies with the sign code, but it doesn't comply with what we see as appropriate signage along a gateway into our community. So certainly we would encourage some conversation from you folks. Is it your desire that signage in a plan development, whether it's designated as requiring special review through the comprehensive plan, is it your intent to follow the sign code as closely as possible? We'll continue bringing these to you on non-consent and presenting to you that first stipulation says if the Planning Commission determines that the signage is appropriate. You certainly have the option today to approve this with a revised sign package. And I just wanted to make sure that you folks know that you have the right to discuss that if you wanted to.
Thank you, Vicki. So what you're saying is through a plan development, we can make adjustments to the sign code by saying we want a lower sign, we want a different type of sign, or whatever we choose.
You've had this discussion in other plan developments when it comes to reader boards where, you know, they're allowed in certain areas. Within a plan development, you've directed us to always put those on non-consent and present them. And that's why this one's here too. As Rob said, they have an LED board on this one so that you're aware of it, that you acknowledge it, and in some instances, you may negotiate a smaller size or have questions about it because of the residential development in the area, et cetera. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that If anyone had a question about the comprehensive plan and what impact this signage may have on that plan, we're certainly here to assist you with that.
Okay, just for one more further clarification, if there's no discussion on the sign or if there's not a change to the sign, that would mean that what they are proposing, the pole sign and the other sign would be approved. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Jan?
I guess this is for Carla. Does this create a precedent that the next people want to have a non-complying sign say, well, you'd let the people out on Highway 44 put one up like that?
I would say when it comes to plan developments, staff and the Planning Commission looks at them on a case-by-case basis. There's unique considerations for each site based on the comp plan, based on the area, based on the zoning. And that you're right that somebody might come in and say that, but I would always argue that you have an ability to look at things on an individual basis, and that there's nothing that commits you. If you make a decision here, there's nothing that legally commits you to make the same decision later.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
yes.
may I add?
Sure.
This is the specific language from our comprehensive plan. It identifies the goal, GDP, GEC 7 signage. The last bullet says prohibit pole signs and billboards in these locations.
And that's for this area, is that what you're saying?
This is along an interway corridor.
Okay, thank you. That's a big help, I think, for us. Okay, John.
Interesting. It's non-compliant with the comprehensive plan, but compliant with the signage plan. So probably the minutes ought to reflect that it's compliant and non-compliant at the same time. And I don't know about the motion maker, but whatever the language was about not encouraging pole signs, but I am in favor of development along this corridor in which this community has invested a great deal and which will serve, and this is one of the developments that's going to serve that neighborhood very well. So that's why I seconded this without conversation on the pole sign, that I felt there was enough justification in this particular site that a facility of this size and comprehensive investment will not lead to a forest of pole signs along Highway 44. So I would add, if the motion maker cares, not encouraging, but supporting.
Vicki?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You know, internally, we've talked about this too. It's hard when we bring these things to you folks, and we really appreciate the fact that you take the time to consider this. The sign ordinance allows reader boards. The sign ordinance allows a pole sign in general commercial along an arterial street. And certainly, if you're going to have a big name convenience store come to town at that location, they're not even going to consider that site if they can't have a pole sign. And we all get that. It's unfortunate that the sign code as it stands today doesn't reflect elements of the comprehensive plan so that we can be consistent with everyone. But as you know, anytime we make amendments to the sign code, that's a long and laborious procedure. So we're letting it set quietly for a while, but at some point, I think we need to go back and look at that so that we're not putting it on the Planning Commission every time to treat some properties differently than others just because of the plan development.
Thank you, Vicki. And through the plan development, that gives us the legal right, though, to make those changes. I mean, we're not saying if the sign code says this, we have to do it because it's the sign code. Through the plan development process, that allows us to make those changes. Is that correct?
Yes, the same criteria that you used for the sign over on Minnesota. Is it in keeping with character of the neighborhood? Is it appropriate based on the street classification adjacent to it? You look at those things independently per site, and Carla made a good point about each site is unique and Planning Commission will look at it individually. So yes, you would look at that criteria.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
I sure hope that late night comedians aren't watching this today, because on one side, if we come to one area, we can have the sign. If we come to the other area, we can't. Then we come over to the next group, and says, well, you know, it's okay here, but it's not okay here. This would make great comedy, I'm thinking. But I agree with John. My motion stands.
Okay, any further comments on this motion? I just want to clarify for me, and I'm not voting unless it's a tie, but I can see the sign for the Common Sense store. I mean, that's a national sign. Everybody uses it. I would like to see the pole sign for the restaurant be something different. I don't see that as necessary, I guess, as the other one. And I would like to have seen some compromise, but I don't see any other lights. So, motion on the floor is to approve with the stipulations as noted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are at item number 14, and items 14 and 15, I am going to recuse myself, so Steve is going to take over for that item, and Andy's going to recuse himself from 14.
Both 14 and 15.
14 and 15 also.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, item 14.
The agenda identifies that we are requesting approval of creating a tax increment district as well as a project plan, and we would like to amend that request to only approve creating the district. Just as soon as my presentation comes up. I think.
It's the difference between the process.
Asinine when it's the same government, it's the same city. Well, it should be compatible. I mean, can you imagine watching this? Oh my gosh.
Okay, we'll do this a different way.
This is fun.
First thing I'd like to do is give some of you new planning commissioners just a quick Tax Increment District 101 overview for you. As we started Tax Increment District, what it does is we create a special district, and you start with a base valuation. So, for example, if there's $100,000 as a base valuation with the 2015 tax levy, today we get 21.768 of a mill levy for that $100,000. So we generate $2,177 in taxes per year. So with a tax increment district, it captures any new increment base valuation within that district over a 20-year life of a tax increment district. So with development of $1 million, we would actually collect $21,768 a year. The increment generated, which is $19,591, that actually goes to pay for approved project costs. Typically, they're public improvements. There's a whole list of things that the state law allows for reimbursement for tax increment districts. And I think my laptop is actually working now. Nope, sorry. So in 2011, excuse me, in 2011, state law was changed to allow not only the consideration of blighted property, but they also allowed consideration of any development that more than 50% of that property creates any kind of economic development through all different kinds of improvements, industrial, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, and natural resources. And then they added a second criterion that was if it improves significantly the value of most of the property. So within that district, if it's an economic development district, that's an allowable use. So with the Black Hills Corporation District in front of you today, it is really, excuse me, the purpose of the TIF is really to assist the property owner with public improvements so that they maintain the Black Hills Corporation headquarters here in our community with an existing count of 500 employees that they're going to consolidate into one location. And then they also anticipate adding 150 employee spaces to the new headquarters facility. And the economic benefit of that particular activity happens to be about $55 million for our community. So with that, here is the proposed location of the facility. It's at the southwest corner of Catron Boulevard and Highway 16. The property is located currently on vacant land, but there is a building permit that has been issued. Here is a graphic of the existing zoning. There is, it's identified as general commercial right now. There is a partial plan development designation within this boundary. The surrounding uses generally are general commercial. There is some general ag north. There's some suburban residential to the south, which is a county zoning. This is a graphic of the existing use. And some of these maps that I'm showing you, those are requirements based on state law on what you have to consider when you look at creating a tax increment district. This particular graphic is the existing land use. Currently, it's identified as a vacant piece of property, but we know that there has been a building permit that was issued. And you'll like this graphic based on previous discussions. This is actually a picture of our comprehensive plan, and I specifically identified the land use designation as mixed use commercial. You can read through that to see all of the different uses, but the most important one is the very last one, professional offices. I've also identified the entrance corridor and the key pieces of that entrance corridor and what we want to try to accomplish with that designation. And then also there's a community activity center where we're trying to create a mix of general uses for services, employment offices, civic uses, so that it's kind of a community area. And the other feature that we have to look at is our major street plan. There is a principal arterial running through the property, identified as Les Hollers Drive. That is one of the public improvements that they've identified within this district. Some pictures. This is a view of the site from Les Hollers looking to the east. You can see Catron Boulevard on the left side of the screen. They are working on that building permit that was issued. This is a view of the property looking from Catron Boulevard to the south. I lightened the picture up a little bit, but you can't really tell, but the little orange dots, those are the worker bees on the foundation. And then we have a picture looking from Highway 16 Service Road to the south, actually to the north-northwest. You can see the road base for Energy Park Drive, which is an east-west connection between the Service Road and Les Hollers Drive. Here is a picture from the Service Road looking north into town. You can see Highway 16 on the right side of the screen. You can see the construction going on the site. Generally, in this area here is where Energy Park Drive is located. And here is a picture of the site plan proposed by Black Hills Corp. You can see the public improvements that have been identified is a traffic signal on Catron Boulevard and Les Hollers. This location here is Les Hollers Drive, or Les Hollers Way, excuse me. That is the principal arterial. Energy Park Drive will be connected from here down to the Service Road down here. This actually is the corner of 16 and Catron Boulevard. These are the two structures that they anticipate constructing now, part of the 500 employees that they're relocating there, as well as the additional 150 spots. They will be providing public utilities as part of this process. They've identified not quite $3.5 million in public improvements for this property. The utilities are about $600,000. The signal is about $400,000. The road construction for both segments is about $2.1. They are going to add a 10-foot bike path sidewalk on the south side of Energy Park Drive, and then there are some administrative construction management fees. And added to that, they are providing the funding, the interest, or the financing for this project within this proposed district. This map shows a couple different things. You can somewhat see the hatched boundary. That is the boundary for Tax Increment District 70. And that's important because anytime there's an overlapping district, any new districts that are created, all of the funds generated from that district go to pay for the first district that was approved. So on this screen, you'll see the Black Hills Corp proposed tax increment district, but then the next item on the agenda is another tax increment district known as Buffalo Crossing. They both have unique Rushmore corridor names. Kind of confusing, so I sort of left those out. But both of those districts that are circled here, any increment generated from those districts will go to pay TID 70 first, and then once TID 70 is paid off, then all of the increment generated will go to pay the public improvement costs within those two districts. As a little more history on TID 70, it was approved to generate income to install a sewer line, a sewer main, construct a portion of Moon Meadows Drive, some turn lanes along Highway 16, and a traffic signal. And those improvements have been installed. I don't know that they have been certified yet, but they're close. And a couple more pictures for you. This one just identifies from a current photo from April of last year the location of the sewer line, the location of Moon Meadows, so that you can actually see kind of what the development is out there. Here's a picture of our existing proposal. And because there is an overlapping TIF district, this is a really good. You can't see any of it, but I'm just going to explain. The numbers here represent the numbers in this first box represent increment generated from the Buffalo Crossing subdivision. The numbers in this color, and you can pull them up from your agenda online if you wanted to look at those numbers. The second box is increment generated from the existing TID 70 boundary and the Hague development. And these are the numbers that are generated from the Black Hills Corp development. And then the last box actually is a compilation of all three of them together so that we could come up with a reasonable estimate on when we anticipate TID 70 to be paid off, and then when those increments can then be directed to the current proposal that's in front of you. And so this is a schedule of when we anticipate Black Hills Corp paying off. You'll see here everything in this box here, there is no increment generated for this revenue or for this district because all of those revenues have been reallocated to TID 70. We anticipate that TID 70 will be paid off, the first payment in 2021. So from that date forward, then, the increment from Black Hills Corp will be directed to their project costs. One question that we have to also answer based on state law is how many TIF districts do we have to date, and what is that total valuation? Because we cannot exceed a 10% total evaluation within our community for funds directed towards TIFs. And I don't know that you can see it or not, but today, at the end of 2015, we were at 2.9%. And with the estimated proposal of the two districts in front of you today, we would then be at about 3.2. So we still have some room. And so then we're going to go back to our current master plan. So what I need you to consider today is, does this make sense for what we're trying to do here? And do we think that with this proposal, this economic impact for our community is valuable enough to create a district? So that's the answer that we need from you today. Do you recommend approving the creation of this district? And do you have any questions?
I've got a speaker request from Jafar from Black Hills Corp.
Mine didn't go so well, so maybe yours.
Okay. I might need your help with this.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Jafar Karam. I'm Director of Corporate Affairs for Black Hills Corporation. Live and work here in Rapid City, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning, tell you a little bit about the Rushmore Gateway Corridor TIF application that we have submitted and staff has just described to you. Fundamentally, this is about stimulating economic development in Rapid City and in the region. I'm going to give you a little bit of the background on who we are as a company, a bit on our project, the rationale for it, and then also specifically on what it means in terms of the development corridor too. So we appreciate your time today. As noted, the TIF district was approved by the TIF Review Committee in January, and that's why it's here before you today. And again, the basic premise behind this is that it will create and stimulate economic development for the region and create jobs. First, by way of just a little bit of background about Black Hills Corporation, you probably know a little bit about us, that we're the parent company for the local electricity provider, Black Hills Energy, until it's our new operating name here. We have been Black Hills Power and still that's our legal name. But we have a long history in the region, over 130 years, starting out as Dakota Power back in the gold mining days, way back when in the last century ago. So What you may not know is a little bit about our growth story. You've probably seen a little bit about it, but we have grown significantly over the last 11 years. In fact, today we are now serving electric and natural gas customers across 8 states. Spans about 1,600 miles from the corner of Arkansas up to the northwest corner of Wyoming, and is about 1.2 million customers across that entire region. How that ties back into Rapid City is that our headquarters is here and has remained here. We have approximately 500 employees that are employed in the Rapid City region, and what we're looking to do is to try to bring those employees under one roof. Today we're scattered across 5 locations in Rapid City, and that presents some efficiency issues, some productivity issues that we feel like we can address longer range, which is part of the rationale and the driver for this new campus or new headquarters that we're proposing here. So all told, we'll have 200 square feet, approximately 200 square feet, 1,000 square feet serving for those employees, but then also the opportunity to expand over time as well. We are on schedule to complete construction and begin moving employees in the fourth quarter of 2017. And we want to do this in a way, and hopefully this visual here helps you to see that, do it in a way that the region can be proud of, something that we feel like is going to be reflective of the area and last for a long time and have a lot of utility for our employees, for the customers we serve, make sure that we can address the security, the technology we needs that we have to serve customers and really make it a great workplace to attract the employees that we're going to need long term, which is really another part of this story, which is about the opportunity to grow. So we have a site that we can expand upon, and we also have a building that if we have the resources, we can invest more into it and provide for more workers to be able to come into Rapid City as a part of this building. So through this tax increment district, we'll be able to take the dollars that are going for some of the public infrastructure improvements and invest that into the building to be able to prepare for additional employees in the region, and specifically 150 workspaces, as was mentioned by staff. So again, we think this is a great opportunity. We're proud to be here in the region, proud to look at the opportunity to grow over time. In the last 11 years, I mentioned that we have grown pretty significantly, and we have added employees to Rapid City, so we have a track record of doing this. We've added about 300 employees over the last 11 years with a significant economic impact for each one of those and the families and what they contribute to the economy here in Rapid City. The last thing, again, I just wanted to touch on is the benefits to that corridor. It is consistent, what we're proposing is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We feel like that's important. We've worked very closely with Rapid City Economic Development Partnership to help and provide an opportunity to develop another part of our area here in Rapid City and prepare for good growth and opportunity for the community to continue to grow and be vibrant for years to come. So again, I want to say thank you for the time today. We see this as really a 3 times opportunity. One is to secure a current employer. The second is that incremental opportunity, which is really fundamentally what this application is about. It's about being able to add those additional jobs, something that isn't a foregone conclusion at all. And there are options out there. So that is something that would allow us to prepare to add jobs for the future. And then the last part, of course, is what it means for development of that region and for the community as well. So I joined here by others from our company that can answer additional questions, and we stand by to answer any of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions from the Planning Commission? Carla?
I would say that just a clarification for what's on the agenda. The agenda says both creation of the TIF district as well as approval of the project plan. Staff are continuing to work with Black Hills Corp on the project plan. So what's before you today, and you'll see that probably at the next meeting or one of the next couple meetings. But what's before you today is creation of the TIF district.
All right, thank you. Galen?
Okay, thanks, Steve. I think we're all in agreement. We're very familiar with the Black Hills Corporation project here and understand its importance in helping stimulate our economy. I guess what I'd like to hear a little more on is what's the catch? What's the net effect on taxing entities? So, I'm admittedly a little new to this process, but I've read up on this. So, from what I can tell from the report here, there's, the net increase in valuation will, that's going to take some money away from the other school districts, the Pennington County. Is that correct? I guess if I get a little more clarification on exactly how much, money is basically being diverted from those other entities to this project is kind of what I'd like to hear a little more on too.
Generally, we look at the impact on other taxing entities when we put the project plan together, but generally, from the revenue projections, this particular district will create an additional $21 million in taxes once it's been paid off. And one thing that I neglected to mention, Black Hills Corp is a centrally assessed facility, which means that their tax generation is just a little different. But they've indicated that they are going to request a special district so that any funds generated from this facility will go toward this district to pay off instead of to be allocated across the state. But normally with the question that you're asking is, we look at that as part of the project plan. Really what we need you to do is determine whether this is a viable project or not and whether it's a worthwhile project to create a district so that we can come forward with the rest of the information that needs to be considered before you approve a project plan.
I guess I'm still a little confused I think we're in agreement that this is a good place for economic development, but I have a hard time agreeing on the district without seeing what the plan is first, so maybe I'm alone in that, maybe not.
Just another note, we had a school board representative, we do have a school board representative as part of the TIF review committee, and he did recommend approval of creating this district as a representation from the school.
Any further questions, Galen? If you look at this, if you look at the definition of a TIF and you read through it, this is probably the best project we've ever had come before Rapid City that actually fits the definition. And the nice thing about this is, as this one comes in, TIF 70, which is out there, it goes to pay that off. All the money goes to that one first, so all that will be coming into the city and into the school that you're talking about. So it's going to help pay that one off quicker. And then this one will be paid off quicker too because they use a higher interest rate. They have to come in and give a projection. That interest rate could be 3 or 4% higher, so that number is going to drop it down. So if we look at, could you tell us on average how many, what the normal years is to pay off the average TIF that we've had? Because you showed a chart last time that showed us all the TIFs and how many were paid off early.
They average anywhere between 7 and 11 years.
Right. And so that means all that property was sitting there getting, $2,000. Suddenly we're getting $21,000. So it actually adds and helps. And that's why the school board member, I sit on the TIF committee. That's kind of why I know some of the information. And if you look at Black Hills Power, we're a little sliver in South Dakota that they service, and everything goes down south. And they have other offices that they can move the 500 people to, but they like it here. So to me, this is a great, great project, and I would urge everybody to approve this. Thank you.
And can I add one thing? When this is when we look at tax increment districts, there's some creative state law out there that says if it's an economic development TIF, none of the school district taxes are impacted. So whatever taxes generated from this property for the school district, they will still receive those dollars.
I'm looking for a motion. Move to approve. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry, John's abstaining. Motion's approved. Item number 16. Was that 14 that we just did?
That was 14.
Okay, I'm sorry, item 15.
So I'm still having technical difficulties with a computer. So we're going to go through the slides manually again. This is a tax increment district request, and with this particular request, we are requesting both the creation of the district and approval of the project plan that's been attached to your agenda. Based on the information that's submitted with the application, this is also considered an economic development tax increment district. And this is the district which is across the road from the one that you just created. It will, currently it incorporates the Buffalo Crossing subdivision. And we'll go through the required maps as well. It's currently zoned a couple different districts, general commercial. There's some medium-density residential district in there. There's some low-density residential 2 district, and then some office commercial zoning. Here we have the existing land use map. The property is currently vacant. The south west portion of the property did have the previous Rushmore water slide on the property, but that's been demolished. And again, here we have a picture of our comprehensive plan land use map that identifies that there are 2 locations of the entrance corridor identified. We have the commercial activity center, and then we also have the land use as mixed-use commercial, which includes retail services, restaurants, hotels, excuse me, health services, and business and professional offices. Here's we don't know what this is on the screen. Oh, okay, there we go. This is a view of the property looking to the east. This is from Catron Boulevard and the original water slide entrance. You can see the property has been cleared and is vacant. This is a picture of the existing Healing Way entrance looking to the east into the Wellington subdivision along Catron Boulevard. This is a view looking from Catron Boulevard, Healing Way to the south, generally on the very eastern portion of the property. This is a view from US Highway 16, generally the service road looking immediately east. Catron Boulevard is on the left, and the homes that you see in the background are the Wellington subdivision. This is a picture from Addison Terminus looking to the north, so this is generally the very south edge of the property looking into town. And this is a picture of the master plan submitted for Buffalo Crossing. The public improvements that are identified in this project, we have the construction of Healing Way. There is a water main associated with that will be constructed for a future water tank down there. There's also, on the next picture, we'll see that they are adding a turn lane for the residents of Wellington right in through here so that they can actually get into their subdivision more safely. There's also a traffic signal that's proposed at this location right at Catherine Boulevard and Healing Way. This is a little bit better picture of the public improvements proposed. We have Healing Way, this water line that will stop right there, the traffic signal, and then the additional turn lane into Wellington. Here we have the probable TIF costs. We have the construction of Healing Way, the turn lane for Wellington, some professional and administrative costs for the road project, then the traffic signal, the installation of the signal, there's some lights and control, and because Catherine Boulevard is so wide right there at that location of the signal, there were some extra costs that were identified. And then also we've included some financing costs for this particular project. This gives you just a little bit better idea on what the revenue projections are for this proposal. We've got 10 homes identified. We've got a 30,000-foot rehab facility. We have a 70,000-foot medical office, some additional homes, some additional offices. But by the end of this project, we anticipate an $85 million increase in the valuation. And again, I have a picture of the overlapping TIF districts. You see the Black Hills Court facility. This is the Buffalo Crossing subdivision. And then in the background with the hatched area, that is the TID 70 district. One thing to note that I didn't note at the, with the last application, there are several other properties that are included in this district that could potentially generate additional income. This goes off the screen to so there's lots of other activity that could happen, you know, once this corridor opens up for development. And these public improvements are going to stimulate that even more. And again, here is the public improvement map for TID 70 with the sewer main, Moon Meadows, the additional turn lanes in 16, and then the traffic signal. I'd show you that revenue projection chart again, but can't read it. And so here we have the anticipated amortization schedule. Again, the first 5 years are devoted to TID 70, and then we anticipate another 3 years or so before this particular project will pay off. And then those taxes would be released for the rest of the taxing communities. And again, here is the chart of the existing tax increment districts. And it identifies that currently we are at TID number 76 and 77 with the two before you today, but we have a total of $138 million of assessed base valuation. And if you look at the year-end tax assessment for valuation based on the state, these districts that are still active have generated almost $500 million, which is, if you compare it to their original base valuation, that's almost $350 million in increment that's been generated. One thing to note is, you know, we've had a lot of discussions in our community that we have way too many TIFs. However, if you look at that chart right there, look at the valuation that's been generated based on what may not have occurred. So there are some benefits to TIF districts. Part of our comprehensive plan, we identified some opportunities that we we could propose to the state legislature so that we had more than just tax increment districts for economic development. Those did not get placed onto the floor for voting this year, but we anticipate next year we're going to push for those options again. But anyway, here is the master plan again. Let's go over the medical facility. There's a restaurant proposed, a convenience store, a hotel, some more retail office, a transitional rehab facility, some more professional offices, and then we have about 140 homes that can be constructed in this location on the east side of the property. And then again, the last map that I have is the public improvements that are proposed. Again, we're looking at the turn lane, Ealing Way construction, the water main, and then the traffic signal. But we did identify in the project plan, we anticipate this to be paid off in about 5 years once TID 70 is done. So the increment from this particular district would come into the actual tax base a little sooner than the vacant property would allow. But if you have any questions, we do recommend that you recommend creating the district and then approving the associated project plan that was linked.
One thing I'd like to follow up too with that is, you always hear people wonder why we do TIFs. If you look at this, when Hague came in and did his, there was just fields out there. So he came in and got the first. Now we got 2 more come in. By the time these 3 are done, we'll have anywhere from $250,000 to $300 million worth of business out there. And that's just the beginning. They've put the infrastructure in once we've done this. So as more businesses come in, that's more tax dollars. But you can see what TIFs do and how they work. Instead of fields out there bringing us $2,000, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars coming into the tax structure, and we're going to be, economic development is going to be booming out there. So to me, it's just great. It's a perfect example of why TIFs work. Moving forward, I have a speaker request here from Mark, is it Ebach? Is that correct?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That is in regards to another item. Once we dispose of this item, we'll visit about Mark's issue.
Oh, I thought it was under 15 here. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Hanny Shafi, please.
Good morning, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hani Shafi, representing the applicant, and I'm here to answer any questions. One of the things that you might have in your packet, which I wanted to add to Patsy's presentation, which she did a great job doing it, is that the economic impact on this for this TIF is approximately $25 or $26 million in annual payroll that will be coming to that corner. The economic impact due to construction is huge, because there is going to be a lot of construction there. The goal of this TIF is to provide additional medical services that don't exist or need to be complemented within our community. And instead of our patients traveling to Sioux Falls or to Minnesota or Denver, they can stay home instead of having all that stress of travel and all the economic stress on them and on their families traveling somewhere else to gain that care. The TIF complies with all the ordinances that the city has, the future land use plan, the major street plan. There is a major street going through the subdivision, which is Healing Way. It will function as a major arterial. The design, as dictated by the traffic engineer, is a 5-lane close to the intersection. The goal is to build it with concrete, so it will be a long-lasting street, a 12-inch water main to serve a future water tank, as Patsy mentioned. As our company, we have been in Rapid City. I have been in Rapid City for 35 years, and the last 18 years of business, we have put in we have been involved in close to $800 million of taxable value within our community. Some of our projects included, Rushmore Crossing, the Caballas, the Red Rock States, the Autumn Hills subdivision, and the Walmart to the south side of town. Our goal is to work with the community, define the community needs, and try to complement and bring something to fit those needs. And we will continue to do so. Sometimes we could not do it by ourselves due to the huge amount of public infrastructure, which is most of the time is regional in nature. And to attract these folks, we have to give them incentives to come to our community. So I thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanny. Any questions from the Planning Commission? John?
Hanny, I'm not like the project. Thank you for your presentation. I do have just more of a comment than a question, probably, but the merging lane up there on Catron and the proposed traffic signal going to be really important in there. The traffic in that area is getting and will increase on that particular intersection where 16 and Catron traverse each other. And this doesn't have anything to do with your plan, but as a living in that neighborhood, I travel that intersection. So I'm curious about the DOT plan for the intersection at 16. Is it appropriate to ask? Maybe Patsy has more information.
They are still working on the potential design for that facility. They had an open house 2-3 months ago that identified 10 or 11 different options. The consultant hired to do that intersection study is still working on those options. As soon as we get something on that intersection that's more narrowed in on what they think might be out there, I'd be happy to bring that to all of you. But there will be some sort of interchange at that location.
I understand, and I appreciate that this project is going to relieve some of that tension with signalization and the Healing Way connection to Catron. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Further comments from the Planning Commission? Seeing no lights, I'm looking for a motion. Okay, Jan moved to approve. John seconded. Okay. All those in favor signify aye. Those against, same sign. Motion carries. Karen, you're in charge again.
Thank you for your patience as I worked through paper slides instead of the PowerPoint.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
during that last presentation, staff received a speaker request form from an area property owner referring back to item number 2. I'd like to advise the Planning Commission that you've already acted on that item, and the applicants have left the meeting. In the past, what you have done is taken testimony from the property owner and then advised him that your decision can be appealed to City Council.
Okay. Thank you. Mark, if you'd like to come forward and state your name, and we'll take your testimony.
Hi, my name's Mark Ebach, and I'm a resident at 1514 Phil Court. And there's a proposed cell phone tower that's going to be directly behind my home in the backyard. And I was here at 7 o'clock, and I did not receive an agenda letter. It started with signage and stuff like that, so I missed it, but I just wanted to voice some of my concerns as a homeowner of having that cell tower directly over my home. I did go to the meeting about a month ago at the Goodwill store and asked the Verizon representative, how much will the values of our homes go down if you had any type of, and he said there's no way to estimate that. And I just feel it doesn't meet the character of our neighborhood. And I just spent about $3,000 removing some trees to the, over there. I have pictures also, but right to over our garage. Can I put that on there? I just removed these trees right here. And then in the alleyway, there was 4 trees that the Goodwill actually owns that alleyway, but there were some dead branches hanging over my shed, so I had those removed also. This is where the proposed cell towers to go, and the tree removal company said my trees probably had a year or 2 left. So this is the bottom of our cul-de-sac. If you go towards the top, it's just going to look like I got about a 100-plus foot tower on top of my house. And that's all I wanted to say today, is express some of the concerns I had about this tower in a residential area.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
We apologize if we didn't get to speak earlier, and I think your option today, since we've already made a motion, is to appeal that to the city council, and you have that right to do that, and they will hear you and your concerns at that time. So make sure you visit with Vicki or the staff and get that put together if that's what you wish to do.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much. Steve.
Yeah, Mark, before you go, just following up, we're basically an advisory board, so when we pass this on to the city council, it doesn't mean it's set in stone. It just means we advise them that this is what we thought. So that's what they're trying to tell us. You're able to go there just like you did today, and they will hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I appreciate you taking the testimony from Mark so that he could be heard, and if he wishes to proceed, we'll assist him on that application and getting it before the city council. It takes about a month to get before the city council, but if you would like that board to hear your comments before they take action, then certainly we'll encourage you to do that.
Okay, thank you. We are now at item number 16, which is some discussion items, and the first one is from Kip. He's going to talk to us about major street plan revisions.
Good morning, Kip Harrington, Long Range Planning. As you're aware, every now and then we like to take a look at the major street plan and do some revisions, especially in areas that are kind of on the outskirts and becoming developed. And so we've identified a few areas that we want to look at. One up of near Nameless Cave Road. There's another one down by the inner tie down south off 79. We've identified some anomalies in the major street plan. As you may be well aware, that we just received updated aerial photographs. We get better contours every so often. So we use that information to try to refine our major street plan and come up with some better ideas. Some of these outskirt areas were drawn a long time ago on old topographic maps. So as we get better information, we like to be able to give a better idea of what can actually go out there. So with the Planning Commission's approval, we would like to be able to come back in a few months after meeting with Public Works staff and going over some of these new aerial photographs and new contour maps and come up with some better ideas of some of these areas that we can refine the major street plan. We'd just like to get your buy-in before we go ahead and make those changes and let you know that we'll be coming back to you with those changes in the future.
Okay. Does anybody have any objection? You don't need a motion, I don't think, but.
I don't believe so. We just want to let you know that that's up there and just kind of get your concurrence. There's no official approval for that.
Okay. I think you've got it. Come back to us. Thank you, Kip.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, Rob.
Thank you. We will give you this has been a long meeting. We've digested a lot of information, so we'll give you one time only get out of jail free card if you'd like to continue this to the March 24th meeting. We can do that. Otherwise, I'll go through this quickly. I won't cover everything in the memo. Hopefully you've had time to review it yourselves.
I guess we're good to
Let's go.
Yep.
All right.
Go for it.
Several months back, the Planning Commission reviewed a conditional use permit to allow a bed and breakfast to be located on a residential property. The property wasn't actually functioning so much as a bed and breakfast as it was functioning as a listing on the Airbnb website. It brought to our attention as staff of the issue of short-term rentals and how our city ordinance was addressing that. Short-term rentals are an emerging business or a home occupation that is having some significant impact in other communities across the country. Given the nature of Rapid City's economy, the way it works, or the way businesses work, the tourism industry in the city. Short-term rentals are something that's going to impact Rapid City. For example, I point out here that on October 30th of last year, there were 27 rooms or homes available in Rapid City at an average of $183 a night. I ran the numbers again last night for the rally this summer, and there are currently 34 rooms available at an average of $400 a night. So it's a significant economic impact in the community. There's a couple things that you guys should be aware of. The first and foremost being that state law says that up to 14 days per year, residents may be rented out for short-term rental basis without the need for any special use permits or extra considerations. That's something for you to take into account because we believe that the vast majority of these short-term rentals that are occurring in the Rapid City area are, for lack of a better term, rally rooms, homes that are being rented out as a part of the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. That's generally occurring for less than the 14 days per year. So we believe that the vast majority of these short-term rentals aren't going to be occurring for more than that limited amount of time, and thus no additional review would be required. However, there are going to be instances where people are running short-term rentals, Airbnbs, out of their home for the balance of the year. And that's what we've come to you for your guidance on. We believe that this is a use that needs to be, there needs to be some additional oversight on that, the scope of which we will leave up to the Planning Commission. We presented a couple options to you, ranging anywhere from just letting things go as they are today, which would be generally regulated through the bed and breakfast ordinance, all the way up to City Council review and approval of any such uses. We believe that the correct course of action would be somewhere in between, perhaps an administrative review that would be appealable to City Council. There are several criteria that would need to be taken a look at as a part of any review. We've gone through that as well. The largest things being, is a home inspection going to be necessary as a part of this type of review? Also, are we going to be looking at the need to renew any type of special use permit that would be issued? Does that need to be reviewed on an annual basis or some other time frame? What kind of background checks do we need to have for owners and operators? And then saturation is also an issue that's been popping up in other communities. These bed and breakfasts can create concerns with affordable housing and rental housing in neighborhoods. You can have entire neighborhoods that are suddenly short-term rentals. So is saturation something that needs to be considered as well? So with that, we leave it up to you to have some discussion on this issue as to what the appropriate criteria for review are and what action you would like the city staff to take in order to follow up on this. And staff is available for questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Discussion. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a person that's gone to other places and rented homes off rental homes by people, it doesn't appear as though there's any oversight on any of those people. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad, and I wouldn't expect to go to the city in which I was in one of those homes to find relief if I had a problem. But I think the issue that brought this discussion forward, if I remember, was in a neighborhood, and there were neighborhood problems. So I understand parking and signage as far as whether the beds are clean or the linens are in there or background checks on the homeowner. I would see that as maybe a bit excessive, and my question would be whether in any oversight the city would, because of its oversight, end up with burden or liability over people that rent out their homes more than the 14 days. I think people that do it that addresses the rally issue in my mind, but people that just buy a house and put it in And saturation issues, I know, are issues other places. So I see those two as the ones that I would think I'd want to have more discussion on, and maybe see what the city thinks about those. Thank you.
Okay, Galen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess similar comment as John's. I think less oversight is better on this. We don't want to dig too deep in the weeds here, and I'm inclined to keep the ordinance as close to existing as possible. And I guess my question is, do we need to specify the 14-day rule? In other words, you have 14 days free pass, and maybe write that into our ordinance, and then after that, I'm not sure how you know if you're over 14 days. It'd have to be a sort of a complaint-based type system. So, and at that point, then we'd have a situation like last time where if a complaint comes in, then you bring them in front, and then we discuss it. So, I think that's my preference, is keep it as similar as possible. Maybe specify you have 14 days, and that covers the rally crowd and any other shorter duration B&Bs.
Madam Chair?
Vicki, yes.
Just for a point of clarification. So currently in Rapid City, a bed and breakfast is a conditional use in some zoning districts, obviously residential. And a bed and breakfast means the operator of the bed and breakfast lives there, and they usually serve breakfast. We don't have anything that's known as a vacation home, and the difference for a vacation home is you rent the home, and when you show up, there's no one there. You're walking into an empty house. What we don't want to do is regulate anything that would be 14 days or less, also known as Rally Week. We don't want to be regulating those. We know people are doing it now. State says that if you rent out your home and it's 14 days or less, it doesn't require any additional licensing. And unless you direct us otherwise, we agree with that, Galen. We don't want to see those have a special use permit or require any fees be paid, et cetera. However, it's those vacation home rentals and bed and breakfast or Airbnbs that are perpetual, that are, maybe they're seasonal, but they go on year after year. And I think Rob's done a really good job in that memo, kind of outlining the criteria that we would look at. John, going to your comment, parking, and the fire department might look at it for, is there a fire code that would need to be met because now we've got a commercial component in this structure, et cetera. And so thank you for the comments you have given us. That's kind of the direction that we're aiming towards, is keeping 14 days and less off the table, more than 14, where do we go from here? Do you want to see those? Is that something that administratively would be looked at by staff, similar to a vending permit for those who are vending out in the right-of-way? We've made those all administrative.
Carla, do you want to step in?
Sorry, Vicki covered a lot of what I was going to say, but I did want to address just two things. One of the things that Rob talked about in his memo that may be a reason why we want to fill the gap that's in our ordinance. Currently, we do regulate B&Bs, but we don't have any similar oversight over vacation homes as they could also occur. There is a 1% tax, well, it's tax revenue is a consideration, because this is an area where technically they are liable for taxes, including our 1% bed and booze tax that we apply here in the city. But because they're largely unregulated by the city, it's not clear if that tax is getting paid or collected. And so that is one consideration of the city that you might want to think about. And to go to John's comment about liability or the city's regulation taking on some additional responsibility of the city for guaranteeing these kind of establishments, I would say I'm not concerned about that. I mean, the question is good. To what degree do we want to regulate and oversee these? That's a good question that you'll have to look at in terms of staff time and regulations and how much you want to interfere with these kind of uses. But I don't have a lot of concerns for the the liability. This is, if you've used Airbnb before, it is largely self-regulating because you can put comments on your experience, you can rate them. That's a fundamental part of these websites that use these vacation homes. So I guess that would be my response to that.
Okay, thank you. Linda, did you want to say anything?
My biggest issue in these things are health concerns, knowing I come from the Department of Health background, and I wouldn't want the city to have legal liabilities for these longer homes when there could be significant health issues. So I don't know what the criteria would be, but that would be my concern.
Okay. I guess I'll weigh in. I don't know if just having a certificate is correct, because the neighbors then really don't know what's going on until it's all of a sudden there's cars there and that kind of thing. And so, but I also don't know if we want to go through the whole like conditional use permit process or something like that. That seems to be excessive in my opinion. But I think there needs to be a balance of some kind, so that if somebody has to come in and they want, or if somebody comes in and they want to do one of these things, longer all year round, that's like a home occupation job. I mean, it's similar to that, but it has other things, other components in it, because you could have the possibility of disrupting the neighborhood greatly by the cars. And I think the parking is the main issue to me. I mean, where are they going to park? So if there's a way to do that, and administratively maybe, and make sure that they comply with certain regulations, and then if the neighbors do complain, they can take it to city council. I don't know. I also like the idea of making sure they pay their taxes, and I don't know how you do that without getting a license of some kind, or that kind of thing. So that throws that into the mix. So those are things that those are kind of my comments, I guess.
I do have another comment.
Oh, Linda, you had something further?
I guess I was going to say, I know that the homes in the Black Hills are regulated, and state inspectors go and check for some of these sanitary conditions. Not every home, but they periodically do, and I don't know that that's something Rapid City would have to, or if the state does it, but I do think there needs to be a little bit of criteria of some kind for safety issues.
Okay. Steve, you had your light on next.
I guess I defer a little bit. I'm looking at this. I took the 34 that you said that were during rally so far, times 400, times 14 days, times 1% is $1,900. You can't even hire a staff person to begin to control this for $1,900 in a year's time.
I'm talking about the...
No, I know. I'm just talking about the tax and everything. I'm looking at this thinking, we're approaching an issue where I don't think we have a problem yet. Now, we should be looking at it, but I don't think we should be knee-jerk and run off and do something really quick, because for $1,900, we're going to spend a whole lot more money trying to hire staff and figure out how we're going to do this and put together to raise money that won't even cover, So I like the discussion, but I think we need to be really, really careful about how we proceed right now, because it's not I don't see the huge problem here right now. And we got to look at cost involved on the one side too. Who's going to pay for this, and what are we going to be doing as we go forward? What are we looking for? How much of a problem is it? Do we know if it's a massive problem out there, or just a 34 that you know of so far? I mean, I'm sure it's more than that, because we can't track everything.
If I may, perhaps using the most recent statistics from the website are a little misleading. I don't think that we're looking for the concern is hiring new staff and trying to create a process. I think that the staff and facilities that we have in place now can adequately address the issue, or assuming some kind of level of review that was administrative, not something where we're sending out inspectors into the field, where fire department officials are going into the field to check on homes. All those would be options for you. I don't know that that's necessarily the correct choice. We just wanted to provide you with that option. So additional staff and resources, I think that's going to be a moving target. I don't see that this is going to require additional staff, depending on what the Planning Commission would decide. But It is an option. That's up to you. If you're looking at something that's a little less intrusive and a little less intensive, resource intensive, I think that there's things in place that can address that today.
Okay, John.
I'm just thinking if somebody bought the house next to me and turned it into a vacation rental, and then when Carla mentioned, boy, are we getting the taxes we're supposed to get on this? Well, now I'm hooked up a little bit. I'd like to think when I rent a vacation home that the neighbors on either side of the house that I rented are happy that an older person that goes to bed at 8:30 is next door. However, last year we rented a place on a trip with 2 other couples, and there had been 15 gentlemen playing golf for 2 weeks, and it was a sty, and the neighbors were wanting to know that we were older, early bedtime people. And so I would have those same concerns. And I was familiar with the saturation issue, which I hadn't thought of even as I read the or the memo. But I would think that people that buy a home and do that, if they just had at the permitting desk, come in and register, pay a fee, so that we know that that home is in there. And the risk would be if they don't take care of things, if they don't make sure people are, taking care of that, living by the house rules when they rent it, they could lose their certificate, and then they have an investment property sitting there that they'd have to deal with. So I think that's enough control. No staff, no nothing. We collect our fee on the front end because it's a commercial business. Don't we sell permits for people that open commercial businesses? And you want to make sure that they have their sales tax license if they're doing that. Isn't that a taxable activity? I don't know.
Today, at this time, the city does not issue business licenses for just any business. There are specific types of uses which require a business license, but there is not just an overall business license for any operator in the city.
Well, I can tell you in California there was a tax line on my overnight rental, but they tax everything. So just my thoughts that from the aspect of a user and a property owner, simple, but...
So at this time, we're kind of...
Yes, Vicki.
We'll need a motion to continue the meeting past 9 o'clock.
Okay. Do that. Okay. Okay, John made the motion and actually Steve seconded to continue the meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Kim, you had your light on.
I agree with what John's saying. Simple is better. Oh. Am I on now? I'll just have to speak louder. It's not working. I agree with John. Simpler is better. But I wonder, we're in the business of zoning and, we think of along those lines for everything. What happens if a house comes in, they want a simple certificate that they want to, but they're not zoned for this use? Now what are we doing? We're kind of saying, yeah, you can do it, but you're kind of contradicting everything that we kind of look at. So I think we kind of need to think about, the both sides of those coins. That's just my comment.
Okay, thank you. Steve.
I got a question. When you talked about the 34 homes for Sturgis time, were those 34 homes in Rapid City itself?
Yes.
Okay, so that means and we know there's more of them. There's some of them in Sturgis, and they're all out there. I mean, this is a conversation that I think maybe everybody should be having, not just us, because Sturgis apparently has the same issue, and I would assume Piedmont and everything along the way would have the same issue.
Based on conversations that I've had with planners in the community, they do have some short-term rental guidelines in place in Spearfish. I'm not sure about Sturgis. We can look into that, but they're having the conversation as well. I mean, just again, the nature of the Black Hills economy, this is just something that we're going to deal with, all the communities.
I guess my recommendation would be that maybe we advise the staff to look at other areas of the country and kind of see if there's something that, you know what I'm saying, for us to form a discussion, we should have ideas coming in and maybe have you guys take a look at that and maybe come back to us with what you found out, what you think might work and then we can have a further discussion.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Vicki.
I acknowledge that it did come to light to the Planning Commission when we had the property owner here and the neighbors showed up and didn't want the bed and breakfast. But the last several years, we have received many phone calls from people who are saying, do I need anything to rent my house out as a vacation home? And our ordinance has never addressed that. So we started discussions with area planners, and much to our surprise, they don't have solid, good, consistent regulations either, and they're kind of waiting to see what Rapid City does. We've been researching other communities, and we've got a stack of them. I do appreciate these elements that you've discussed today are very important for us, and we will take a dry run at trying to put something together, and I think I'm starting to get a feel for what direction you want us to go, that we are notifying the neighborhood that maybe it is a special use permit that's administratively reviewed after the neighborhood receives written notification. There's a application fee, a yearly renewal fee. It may require that the fire department sign off on the use. They have to demonstrate certain things like parking and how are they going to allow pets, and is that going to be a fenced area, and the things that would minimize the impact to the existing neighbors. And we'll kind of work through that and see what we can come back and share with you folks. But I'm glad to see that you have many of the same concerns that we have.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Brett, you had a comment.
Yeah, real quickly, we wanted to get your opinions on the issues today. I think we also need to go to council and ask them what they think too. What I'd hate to do, and why we always try to bring these white papers forward first, is I don't want to get in the business of drafting something and then bring it here cold to you, and then you're looking at this thing going, what are you doing? So the more opinions we can get from Planning Commission, City Council, I think the better the product's going to be at the end. So if you could maybe in your motion include passing this by council for initial comment, that'll give us some additional direction for drafting whatever we need to draft. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. I think the motion is to allow the city council to also make this comments before you guys draft anything, and I think that's kind of a gimme, but I guess that's the motion on the floor, so we'll say aye or nay. So all those in favor of that motion say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Since we're off of that subject, I would like to just bring up something else. Since we talked about the pole sign, now that you mentioned that, and the discussion of what we can do with our sign laws, and then we have those planned developments that we have the chance to amend and make choices on. My concern is that we have a future land use plan or a comprehensive plan that says, here's what we all looked at and this is what we all discussed. And part of that comprehensive plan for this last item was that in that area we didn't want to see any pole signs. Yet when we make the motion to do something, we sort of look and say, well, the sign code says we can do that. So we all say, let's just let them do it. So we're compromising ourselves between the comprehensive plan and our regulations. And if we're not going to follow the comprehensive plan that we all agreed on, then why do we have a comprehensive plan? And that's kind of my concern. So how do we say to ourselves, here's the plan that we want to see and how we want Rapid City to grow, and then when we come down to making those decisions, we don't follow that. And so that's my comments, and I don't know if anybody else wants to swing in. I know Steve does too. He's got his light on. So,
one of the things I just wanted to thank the staff too, because today was an unusual day, you know, and the staff knew this was coming. When you have the one issue, and then suddenly you had to be looking at that, thinking, this is going to come up. But you had talked to them, and you explained to the church that, hey, this is a way you might want to go. And I appreciate that you have done that and that you had that conversation with them. They could have chosen to go the other way, and now maybe they'll think about it, come back and visit with you. But I just wanted to thank you for at least going that way. And in answer to to what you just said, Karen, the comprehensive plan is a guide and it's a tool just like anything else. And I look at that area, that corridor coming through there, and to me, where the gas station was going, it's a 4-lane highway. If you look down there are other signs. To me, it fits in that area. Had it been a bunch of homes there, beautiful area, whatever, I might have looked at that and said, you know what, that sign doesn't fit there. But the whole idea of the comprehensive plan is not to say you can't do that here. I think you said it earlier. It's a guide to what we'd like to see in that area. But I'm taking a look at that area, and I'm looking at what's right up the road there. I drive by that all the time. I saw that as being appropriate for that particular place. And then when Jan asked that question, are we making this a precedent? And she said no. Okay, I'm looking at saying, okay, I can do that in that location, the guideline. I looked at the guideline, and I made a different choice based on that. No different than when I'm sitting on the variance board. I have criteria there, and I can make changes based on that. And that's how I look at it, I guess, Karen.
Okay, John.
I agree with you, Karen, that they ought to be in line. So my comment would be, I think the council ought to change the ordinance because ordinance trumps plan. I mean, let's just talk about who's on top of the heap. It's the ordinance. And so here came a citizen of our community with a development plan forward and understands they have the ace and we have the king. And so they're ready to play that card. And as Vicki so eloquently stated earlier, you guys take the sign plan back to the council and ask them to amend it to be lining up with our comprehensive plan. And I do think that we ought to be doing that. I think when these issues come up, that is a signal that we ought to say, if it was good with all the time we spent with that comprehensive plan, making it right for our city, that our ordinances should reflect that guidance. There isn't a stronger argument, I don't think, that we could make for that. So I don't know how you move the sign ordinance back. We've all been down that road so many times that I think, Vicki, you should do it.
Excuse me, I didn't catch that. Madam Chair?
Yes, Vicki.
I do concur. Obviously, the comprehensive plan is a wonderful tool, a lot of energy put into it, and hopefully it will improve these corridors as we see additional development. And we're excited to see what some of these developers are doing along these street sections, and this is an exciting time for us. But remember this, there's only a little tiny bit of Orchard Meadows that's in a planned development. The rest is outside of it. That's just, the front end is zoned general commercial. They could come in today and get a sign permit for a pole sign with an LED on that street, and the only reason we had the discussion today is because it's in a planned development. So that's why I say, at some point, we need to be looking at our sign code and making the change there so everybody plays by the same rules.
I agree with you, and I think for me, the comprehensive plan is more than just a plan. It's what we want to see in the future. And if we look, like Steve says, well, right now there's other signs out there, so it kind of fits. But do we want those signs out there in the future? And that's kind of where I look at it, is how do we make sure that our city is what we want it to be? And I agree with John. If we aren't going to be able to follow that, I mean, I personally can vote no, but no, not everybody can say that. I mean, people have their different opinions, and I just think a planned development is there for the tool we use to be able to make adjustments to the sign code or whatever there is that we can. That's why the planned development is there, and we should be using that. And I don't think we use it sometimes to our best advantage. And I think a lot of people think planned developments are heavy-handed, but they're there to look out for the city as a whole and the people who live here, not just that property owner. So that's my 2 cents. Steve, you wanted to add to that?
I don't disagree with you, Karen, but yeah, I think you said it best when you said there's different opinions out there. In the planned development, I'll give you a perfect example, Ace Recycling. They would have them somewhere where they didn't fit at all. I mean, that was a perfect example that it doesn't always fit. And so again, I'll agree with you, there's different opinions, and you and I will probably always disagree on signs.
Probably. Okay. Anything from the staff?
Just one item, in case some of you have not heard, Brett is leaving us and moving back to Colorado. and he might want to share with you what those duties will entail, but his last day is March 11th. So on the March 10th Planning Commission meeting, we would like to invite him back to this meeting so that we can give him a farewell.
Yeah. In the interest of time, I'll let you go, and I'll be a little bit better prepared on the 10th, but I'd like to visit with you, and just want to thank you all for all your patience with me, understanding, and I think we've done a lot of great things here. Thanks.
I'd like to ask the police department to arrest him and put him under observation for 4 years. He can't leave Rapid City.
Thank you, Brett. Be prepared on the 10th. Okay.
Madam Chair, I have one
Sorry.
issue.
Yes, Kip.
I'm sorry, on our discussion on the major street plan revisions, it turns out we would like a motion that says if we are directed by the Planning Commission, that relieves us of the notification requirement.
Okay.
So if we could please make a motion to proceed with those major street plan revisions, that would allow us to go ahead and do that without notifying everybody in the city.
Okay, Steve made the motion, and Linda seconded it. All in favor of that motion to do that, say aye. Opposed?
Thank you, and
Motion
again, my
passes.
apologies for that.
That's all right. Thanks, Kip. Meeting's adjourned. Do I have to have a motion for that? We're done. Okay.